You know, he's really he's shameless in intellectual argument. He's absolutely without character, a moral foundation, or even intellectual substance.
Episode we talked about the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City and how great and novelistic and dramatic it was. And this episode we will be discussing Glittering Images by the wonderful Camille Paglia. And this is a field recording episode, so we're recording at Monty's in Melbourne. And I am joined by a special guest, Lucas. Welcome.
Hello.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
We were discussing before why I selected you for this episode, and
why did you select me?
And I came to the conclusion that I can't remember. I think you said I mentioned Apollonian, and then you were like, you did
I think we
Leo meme pointing at the TV, like Camille Paglia sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think we met for a beer. We could quickly establish that we had a lot of common interests. And yeah, you dropped in Apollonialism into, I don't know if I'm sure I'm saying that right. Yeah. Apollonialism into conversation. I was like, Camille Paglia? I know you've heard of Camille Paglia, who I was incidentally just probably like a year prior, just kind of getting into.
Awesome. How did you get here?
How did I get to Camille Paglia or to
me?
To you?
How did you get on this podcast?
How did I get on this podcast?
Tell people who want to get on the podcast how to get on the podcast.
Well, to get on the podcast, you have to become friends with Matt, essentially. As I mentioned, I think that we had strikingly similar interests. I think you had written or are writing for a few publications that are not kind of mainstream. They were
dissident.
A little bit dissident, which was exactly the kind of stuff that I was actually engaging with a lot more, particularly after the year 2020.
Yeah, the C word.
Year zero.
Yeah, year zero. Yeah.
I think that was about it. I don't know. We just hit it up straight away.
Yeah, and we had many conversations about art and stuff already, so I thought it'd be great to record them for the podcast. I also got this, here's some like deep podcast lore as well, is that this was I believe a birthday present from Paul Della Rosa, who has been on the show. I think you've met him a couple of times, Paul,
yes,
writer. So I was like, I need to read this because it's been on my list for a long time and I never got around to buying it, but thank you, Paul, for buying it for me.
I have to ask, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
He's giving you a hardback copy of Glittering Images. Did this have a dust jacket on it?
It did.
It did?
But I when I carry books, I don't like to carry it with the dust jacket. Because reading it is just so annoying. Like, I hate reading with a dust jacket.
True. I've only got the old paperback version.
Yeah, the floppy one, as I call it. Camille Paglia, I have a bit of a history with, in the not a personal history, but in the sense that when I was a long time ago in a land far away, when I was like trying to be an academic, I did my thesis on. Well, here's the thing, actually. I'm going to go into my thesis a little bit.
Yeah, go on.
And what I wanted to do was to do like this, like far-ranging, almost Parlian kind of look at literature, theatre, film, television, through a kind of, I guess what you would call it now is queer aesthetics. So, but basically gay male aesthetics, to be honest. Like, so just sort of looking at a very synoptic kind of survey, aesthetic history, I would call it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what she does in most of her books. She does things like that. But I kind of wanted to like lean into the gay angle and look at that in my thesis. What ended up happening was that my examiner, who was a good examiner, ended up like telling me, supervisor, ended up telling me that, I should focus down on just one area. So he told me specialize, and this is the problem I think with academia, which again Camille Paglia talks about, which is this siloing of knowledge and this like making people specialize down to like really granular like disciplines within sub-disciplines sort of thing. And I also really wanted to use a lot of Camille Paglia in my work because she was really influential on me. But I was kind of discouraged from that as well because, like, she wasn't really considered like a proper academic because she was considered to, I guess, populist in that, for one, she writes really clearly. So anyone can understand it. And also she has an appreciation for not just high art but also popular art and like more demotic stuff, I think. And I always really loved that about her. And I also, like every gay man, I love the clips of her being like a cunty, sassy, like gay woman, like just being like, oh, I love Madonna and all that sort of shit, and being a very fast-talking Italian was very appealing to me. But she has this approach which is like, a lot of listeners to my show will know who Camille Paglia is, but she has this approach to like art and literature and stuff that is, like I said, very synoptic, she gives an overview and like brings so much more into it in terms of the cultural context rather than just like taking a piece of art in isolation and just like examining it. Like you can feel like the waves of history informing everything she does. So that's sort of my history with her. What's your history with Camille Paglia?
I can definitely speak to a bit of what you're doing. Just clarify, you were doing a master's? PhD.
Yeah.
And you had the PhD.
I did get that eventually.
You did get it. Yeah. How has that worked?
Well, it's worked out well. Like, it's good for podcasting, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. My personal history. So, I actually don't have a connection with Camille Paglia specifically through academia. So, I went to university. I did English literature at undergrad and at master's level at the University of Manchester. That would have been, this was when, like back in 2010, back around that time. Camille Paglia did not appear. I don't think even once was Camille Paglia referred to or put on a reading list at university at all.
Not in my university experience.
I don't remember any
I
academic...
was bringing her into to my studies.
She had never been talked about, although I could recognize Sexual Personae, like the book on the shelf. I kind of was aware of it, but I actually, if I'm thinking about my first encounter with Camille Paglia, I have to actually go way back to when I was, I'm going to say this was 2003, where I actually saw Camille Paglia for the very first time in one of her greatest modes, which is on television. She was actually she was a talking head on it must have been a special in about 2003 on Channel 4 around Halloween time called 100 Greatest Scary Moments. And she was a talking head on the segment specifically about Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Amazing.
And right there and then, I rewatched the clip just to refresh my memory, but there and then she is laying out the deep archetypal undergirdings of such a fairy tale as Snow White. She's saying there's the three stages of woman. There is the young virginal maiden, there is the woman in full flower who's heading for a decline, and then you have the old hag. And that was the first time I'd ever actually encountered her. And for some reason that memory persisted for years and years and years until I think I made a friend in 2020, 2021 who was very into Camille Paglia, and I was instantly able to reconjure this memory. And I bought some of her book. I started investigating her interviews, and yeah, took it from there. And I agree with you. She has this non-didactic, not dry, not academic style. Like she's talking the language of. She's talking a popular language. She's talking the language of just people, everyday people. She's talking about everyday realities, and she has a way distinct from all those academics who hone in on, as you were saying, on very, very granular niche kind of areas. They don't actually know much about anything else apart from their very specialized field. She has a way of like bridging all the gaps between all these disparate things, and also casting us way back to something like very, very old, very, very ancient, and actually bringing this all together as a whole. That I found absolutely fascinating. She was like a breath of fresh air in my stagnant little academic world, because I had done the whole queer theory thing.
You'd done it.
I'd done it. I did it.
Yeah. Praxis.
Yeah.
Did you get a dangly earring? And
I had two dangly earrings.
Yeah.
I had done all of that back then, and yeah, she was a breath of fresh air just into my stagnant intellectual world. It just blew it wide open, and really set. I think she completely set this new direction for me in terms of like, what am I going to be? What is my mode of inquiry going to be? Like in terms of what I love about art and literature and culture for like the rest of my life. And I think it's like partly about this regression of like going back and like connecting these newer forms to these like far older forms, archetypes.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very like. It's like that meme from It's Always Sunny, with like he's like crazy about all the connections with the red string and stuff on the board.
Oh yeah.
She's like
he's
that.
Trying to work out the mailing system.
Yeah, but that is like that's what like a good academic in terms of art and culture should be. I think like you should be like that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be just like, oh, I'm only interested in like this 1 5-year period in southern Italy in the 1500s or something like that. Because like, first of all, what is that bequeathing to like the next generation? Like if you're engaging in sort of like a arts and humanities project, like you should be like educating people on these broader things, right? Like those smaller things are important, but like it's like what actually happens in academia is that people go so far down that route. I've been there, so I've seen all of this. People go so far down that route that they know nothing about anything else. Like not even like tangentially. Like I've been talking to serious like high level academics in I don't know, whatever field, and they'll just have like these huge gaps in knowledge that it's just like it really is shocking, like how that will happen.
It really exposed to me like how desperately inadequate my education was at university level. Like I actually felt like I experienced this like shame. I was like, wow, all those years, those wasted years. We could have been digging into like so much, and how what we actually got was so superficial. And like I remember like the first module I did was basically like everything was like fits and starts in terms of like literary history. Like you'll do one ancient text and then we're suddenly reading like The Heart of Darkness or something. Like massive swathes of time just missing, and yeah, this preferential treatment for, I guess, what Camille would call like the cafeteria menu, the little pick and choose, like choose your own curriculum kind of thing. It's like, no, there is something to be said for like forcing students to engage with everything that they personally think they don't want to or don't have to engage with.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I think there's something to be said for that.
Students
And
don't know what's good for them.
They
Like,
do not know what's
This is
good for
what like academia has ceded as well. It's ceded authority. I spoke
Authority
a bit-
to the students
Yeah, yeah.
who don't know anything.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't know anything. I mean, I'm personalizing it. We did not know
Yeah,
anything.
because there's this like vogue, and like Paglia rails against this, but there's this vogue for like not having hierarchies and authority. But it's like, no, if you've done the study, well, this is the thing that most academics haven't done the studies on this, but like if you had the education, it's your job to impart that. And it's like it's not the student's like choice. Like, the student is signing up to be educated because you know something that the student doesn't. But there's all these like voguish sort of theories about education where like, well, sometimes the teacher can learn something, and that's true. Like, I've been a teacher, and like that is true on some level, but not in terms of content. Like, the student is not going to teach you anything about art history if you're an art history like expert. The thing, and I've spoken about this even with guests on this podcast. Like, a few months ago, I spoke to our friend of the pod, Marsha, who is studying at VCA dance, and it seems like it's very theory like heavy. Like, it's like even dance.
He's studying dance.
She is. Yeah.
She's studying.
And it's very theory, and even dance is like a physical. It's like an embodied thing. Like,
it requires no thought.
Yeah.
Not active thought. Yeah.
So it's like even there's this like over-emphasis on like theory and shit like that. And theory can be interesting, I guess, but like it's not a kind of broad education. The one that like students not only need, but I find actually want. Students actually want structure. They want to be able to contextualize all of this stuff, right? So like, there's a dog on my butt. Like, she does that really well, and she also laments in the introduction to this book and elsewhere as well in her other work that like the universities, like, basically across the Anglosphere, have just abandoned the idea of the survey course. So like, you don't do a great books course anymore. You don't do like an art history course, and this is really important
because it's suspicious to say that anything is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Or anything is, at the top of a hierarchical system of authoritative work. Yeah, exactly. I was also going to just slip in that as far as I'm aware of how, like art schools tend to operate now, a lot of the students spend a lot of time not actually making a lot of art, painting, sculpture, whatever. They spend a lot of time theorizing and writing up and being taught how to write up. Basically a defense of their artworks. How it intervenes in this discourse.
It's art that interprets itself before it's even made.
Right, exactly.
Before it's even exhibited.
And another thing of, you ever notice you go to a museum now and how much you go to an art gallery or a museum to look at a piece of art, how much writing there is now accompanying a work of art. I go to museums, I never look at anything that's written about them because I'm almost guaranteed I'm going to be reading how this intervenes in this discourse and that discourse. It's like, I don't care. I literally don't care. There's no words that are necessary to complete this experience. Like, this is an entirely visual embodied experience. I don't need all of this false interpretation going on.
Yeah, and it's always from a particular viewpoint as well.
Of course. It's typically leftist, typically feminist. Post-structuralist.
Which is also so, like, old-fashioned now. Like, post-structuralism is, like, over, what? It's older than me. Like, it's from, like, the 60s and 70s. Like, shut up. But, like, so it's like, come up with something new, Like, even if you're going to do that bullshit, like, come up with something new. But the great thing about Paglia is she has this great, like, great sort of, like, historical, almost Wagnerian, like, historical sweep of, like, everything that she talks about. And in Sexual Personae, That one is that was written in the 90s. That was her big breakout book. I like that you said as well, she's very accessible, but at the same time, she's also extremely erudite, and very rigorous. She's not it's not dumbing anything down. It's making it accessible. So that's the big book, and she's doing a similar thing here. But what I think is interesting about this book is how it. She starts with this introduction, which is a magisterial introduction too, by the way.
Fabulous. Yeah. If you read nothing else in the book, read the introduction.
Yeah, she talks about, and she's talked about this many times. And another thing about Paglia that I really love is how much she repeats herself. She says the same things over and over again, which I don't have a problem with because they're things that need to be said and need to be bored into people's brains.
Re-emphasis rather than needless repetition. Yeah.
But anyway, in the introduction to this, she talks about how this was written in 2017, so it's her most recent book, I think. Apparently, she's got some book about American Indians on the way, but I feel like everyone who knows about her was it
2012?
12. Okay,
yeah.
Not
so it was a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Because she's been missing in action for years.
ages.
Where in the world is Camille Paglia?
She's researching American Indians or something
She's still
like that.
doing it.
Yeah. And anytime anyone tries to get in contact with her, fellow podcasters that I know and stuff who really love her, you're always met with this wall of assistants who are
really?
Professor Paglia is busy
Let's decline your invitation.
Yeah, busy investigating the flint tools of the Mississippi culture or something like that. But
God, I wish I had her life.
What's that?
God, I wish I had her life.
Yeah. But this book she starts with this premise, which is true, which is that modern culture is sort of awash with images. So we're kind of just, and she even says, I really love this phrase that she says, the eye is fatigued by images. Absolutely. And it gets into this I get what she's saying there, because it's almost this stupor. This is especially so now with social media, where you're just bombarded with different images all the time. And I think what she's trying to do here is make some kind of demarcation of the images that sort of matter, the ones that's what ones that glitter.
Yeah.
And so
luminous.
She's tying all of these images and things back to ancient times, and she goes back to the pharaohs and the Bronze Age collapse in Greece. And then she goes forward to the Art Deco and Star Wars and things like that. But she ties it all together in a really it's not that it has a through line, but there will be bits and pieces between the chapters that are she talked about this earlier, and that's a reference to this artist has referenced this thing that she's talked about.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments that nicely sort of chime with each other through the chapters.
Yeah.
I think there is a theme in the book which is actually spirituality.
Yes. Yeah.
Spirituality to me seems to be the through line between everything.
I just mean in a narrative sense. So it's
exactly,
not it's not chapter 1 then knocks on to chapter 2 sort of thing.
Yep. Agreed. Yes, totally.
But yeah, definitely the spiritual aspect is a huge.
And the idea of the eye being fatigued. I mean, I think everyone knows something about that firsthand.
Yeah.
Just we are now looking, through phones, for instance.
Yeah.
We have hundreds, thousands of images that are whizzing past us, through a scroll cycle. We're not taking anything in, or it takes a fraction of a second for something to make an impression on us. There's no context for the images. There's no connection between any of the images. We're not even, I don't think our brains even have having the capacity for the amount of information that we're constantly packing into them all the time. And her sort of remedy for it that she suggests in her introduction is about slowing down and really regaining focus. I think is a term that she uses specifically, which I really like. This slowing down and really spending a lot of time actually absorbing and taking in like singular images and regaining this knowledge of how to see these things within their proper light, within their proper context.
The introduction is great, and when she talks about that stuff about fatigue in the eye, I think 2012, I think social media existed, like Instagram probably existed, a few other things.
I mean, she wasn't to know how bad it would get.
Whereas
but she was prescient that she knew it was heading that way.
Yeah, the images are just, there's a cheapness to everything. Like even, and this is a point that is made like ad nauseum, but like even images of great works of art become part of this. You know? How many, if you go on Instagram right now and like look at the hashtag Mona Lisa or something, you'll just get a stream of like people at the Louvre or like some like reproduction of that painting. And it's not the same thing as like studying that image, that image. And that's what she does in each of these chapters, is she takes an image and she like really meditates on it. I mean, it's not like a long drawn out thing, because she's such a good writer that she can like give you so much to chew on in about 5 or 6 pages. And that's what I really like about that. And like you can kind of leaf through this book if you want, find an image that's striking and like read what she says about it if you wanted to do that.
Never exhaustive, never boring, never long-winded. In some ways I think of Glittering Images as almost like the antidote to, not the antidote, that's the wrong term, but as like the counterpoint to something like Sexual Personae, which is obviously very long, very weighty. Similarly, I would say like you could probably read the introduction of Sexual Personae and the introduction of Glittering Images and get a really good idea of Camille Paglia, and then you can sort of pick and choose what you're going to engage with in her writing. It's all worthwhile, but it never like demands that you have to literally sit through every single word that she's saying to get a really good idea of what her points are. I've lost track of what I was talking about.
Right. I'll get us back on track. The one point I really liked in the introduction in particular, and this is a point again that she's made elsewhere, is that a lot of even art critics and like art academics and stuff like that are very tied to this like post-structuralist, postmodernist notion of the text rather than the image. So like a lot of like what you would get in your university experience, if you do, even if you go beyond literature, if you look at film, TV, art history, they'll be looking at these things in terms of as a text rather than language, like, which is like
everything's mediated.
What she's getting at here is that some of this stuff goes beyond language. It goes beyond like the meaning making that you can make with words, and it's like that's what you were saying before about how it gets towards that spiritual dimension. I think. It's like. And one of the things that she talks about throughout the book, and I think it's in the introduction as well, is like this attention she pays to materials of the images like making, and how important that is, rather than just, if you take like a textual view, it's just like, I don't know, look at the first image, like it's the queen being escorted to the underworld. It's like a textual way of doing that, like like a semiotic way of doing that, would look at it in like narrative terms rather than just like, what are the spiritual and cultural dimensions to this? How was it made? What was the context in which this image was produced? Like, that's not really about... it's not really a textual reading of it. It's like I don't even like using the word reading, because even reading like submits to that logic that she's railing against. Like, it's looking at an image and like really absorbing it, I think. Which is weird because, like she said, and especially now, we're constantly assailed by images, but the way that people interpret them is very literal and textual, which is a very strange dynamic that's going on.
As I said, it's like a fraction of a second that an image now has to make an impression upon us, and we don't go back for a second look most of the time, most of the stuff. I was going to say that the paying attention to the materials and the physicality of art, like it's a physical like these are physical objects. Like a painting is not just a flat image, but a physical object. I was thinking about they probably put it on. I think they had it on at the NGV, which is a local art gallery in Melbourne. They had a Van Gogh or Van Gogh exhibit, but I don't think there was actually one physical Van Gogh actually at the exhibit. What they'd done instead was they like project it as like a light show into like a blank room, his image of like flowering fields and everything or something, and so you could go and like sit in the painting and experience it as this like kind of light show. But I was thinking to myself like, but Van Gogh, like there's so much of Van Gogh that would be lost because you're not really seeing how the paint is like built up on the canvas, that it has like a physical and textural dimension to it that's really important. But these days again, a lot of shows are being turned into like mass entertainment. They want it to be interactive. A lot of art shows are interactive now. People want to see themselves within the artwork, or literally within it. You can go and sit within one of Van Gogh's fields.
And that is almost always to like create more images too. Like it's like you go to this exhibit to take photos to share on Instagram that you were at this exhibit.
Yeah, and then you go to the shop where you can buy, I don't know, Mondrian on a tote bag, the Mona Lisa on a mug, and Caravaggio on some, cup holders or something.
You're sounding like Banksy now.
And they don't. And the thing is, they don't even have to be at the museum or the gallery.
We tried to put it on, but it didn't seem
I think it's broken.
You press it once, and then if the light goes off, it'll just leave it.
Cool. Thank you. I love that sort of. I love sort of this stuff. So I'm keeping that in. So what were you saying? You.
I think what I was saying was. The gift shop at an art gallery is again another excuse to mass reproduce all of these images, and they don't actually have to be exhibiting any of the artworks that they have like on any of the products that they're selling. And that's interesting as well. Like they would always print like the masterworks on these type of things that people really want to buy. So if anything, it actually still proves that like there's still this desire for an appreciation of like the old masters, and there's like authoritative works, the Mona Lisa and Mondrian and Caravaggio and the Renaissance and all these people that people still want to buy because no one's buying something with anything made in the last few decades.
People are, but it's usually a money laundering thing. That's a whole thing we could get into. But,
you'll have to tell me about that.
But and this book especially, like we said, her style is really lucid, and she just like explains it so well. I thought as well for the format of this that we would go through like 5 glittering images that she talks about that we liked, the chapters, and it'd be interesting. We don't know which ones each other has chosen.
We might cross over.
We might have some crossover, but I'll go first because my first one actually is the first chapter, so it's the one about the Egyptians.
Okay.
So I've got to get the artwork right. Sorry, just got to look at it.
This is
I don't think it's actually an actual art piece. It's just about Queen Nefertari. Camille Paglia has this thing about, she did it in Sexual Persona as well, is that she loves to go back to Egypt. And I love that about her because I've always loved Egypt as a child and stuff. And this is the thing about this book as well, is that, I'm very familiar with Egyptian art. Like, I used to have those big, like, kids' books of, like, pyramids and Egyptian art and hieroglyphics and stuff like that. Always with a gold dust jacket as well. But one of the things I liked about this chapter was how, and this is how great she is, that she can make you realize something about a work of art that you didn't think of before. And the key thing that I took away from this one was how the perspective in Egyptian art is an impossible perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never thought about that before.
No,
like,
me neither.
Because the figures are always sort of turned in one way, while the top half is one way, they're in profile, but their eyes and mouths are like they're up front, and the legs are turned. And she talks about this like distortion effect of that, and how interesting that is.
Absolutely.
That comes up later as well, but with another piece that I've chosen. But like, I love that she makes you see in a different way, which I found really.
It kind of has that almost like later cubism kind of aspect of the multi-perspectives. Yeah, exactly.
Which is like, and also she brings in like so much of the cultural beliefs of the ancient Egyptians as well, about the process by which someone goes through the afterlife and like meets the various different gods, and they all judge them and all this sort of stuff. And also what I really liked about that, and I've always sort of liked about the Egyptian afterlife thing, is that it's like like you're saying, the textural and the physical. It is a physical place. Like, you've got to bring your furniture. Like, it's like moving. Like, I just love that. Like, and she talked about the decor and the stuff that was buried with the queen. And, I just really love that.
You gotta have money.
You gotta have money. The Greeks had that as well. You gotta pay the ferryman.
You gotta pay your way into the afterlife.
Yeah, so I just really like that. It's a great opening chapter. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go back further, maybe, but like, I think in terms of glittering images, like the most ancient, I would say, would probably be the Egyptians, but maybe, who knows?
Would you like me to do the second one?
Okay,
yours? So I actually went for the second chapter, which is actually of the.
I almost chose this one.
I'm choosing to pronounce Cyclades. Excuse my pronunciation if that is wrong.
I'm not Greek, so I don't know.
But
Cyclades.
The idols of the Cyclades. So this is a figurine dating to about 2800, between 2800 and 2300 BC. I think from around kind of where Cyprus is now, those kind of areas. So we're in like Stone Age mother cults, essentially. This image,
they're quite spelt, aren't they?
This one is very spelt. This is actually in great contrast to the other famous example that she'd used in Sexual Personae of the Venus of Willendorf, which was pulled out of like a bog in Germany, around there, which is supposedly a mother goddess, symbol of fertility. But that one was huge, bulbous, big, rolling, bubbling thighs, rolls of fat, pendulous breasts.
Lizzo, basically.
Lizzo. Well, not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. That
she's turning into
the idols of the Cyclades. Like they're Ozempic.
They're essentially Ozempic. So the Venus of Willendorf, obviously the idea, containing that idea of the earth being fertile and fecund and teeming with life and
distended with life.
Women even like sort of, because like early man and woman we suspect didn't know that, say, coitus between a man and a woman would produce a child, which is amazing to think of. They didn't, but because human development is so different than other animals, it's like it takes a long time, relatively, for pregnancy to show. So they had no idea that sexual intercourse had anything to do with fertility, with like pregnancy. So women seem to swell with her own kind of inner magic, and to be like this very closed, self-contained kind of being. But returning to the Cyclades idol, you can see that the rolls of fat in contrast, have completely been stripped away. You've now got this angular figure, almost like masculine broad shoulders, sharp, almost fashionable.
Yeah.
This long neck that I think she mentioned it somewhere, but that Italian painter Modigliani, with the long elongated, was like giraffe-like necks of women, the neck becoming a kind of erotic kind of area, I guess, on the body. The very small breasts, what would you call it? The pudenda?
The pufa?
The pufa?
Yeah.
The fupa. Yeah. Area is just a carved triangle, but the legs are like shut, tight, again, this idea of woman is self-contained within herself, with this sort of inner second magic.
And big schnoz too. Very Greek.
Very big Greek schnoz. No eyes, no other facial features, which is interesting in itself. I think the most interesting thing that she hits upon in this chapter is the ambiguity of whether this figure would have been something that was laying flat or something that was stood on its feet.
Yeah.
As we're looking at the image, it looks like it is standing on its own 2 feet, though most likely as a ritual object for fertility rituals, it would have been laid flat on its back. But on being recovered by archaeologists, we stand it upright, and therefore giving it a new perspective gives it an entirely new meaning. So the mother figure laying flat against the earth contrasts to the human being then standing on its own 2 feet. The head is raised towards heaven, towards the stars.
Yeah, I blame feminists for putting her upright. She should be on the ground. Also, I really liked I haven't seen like the 3D image of this, but in this image of it, her feet look like Barbie doll feet because they look like angled. You know how Barbie dolls have like
slightly
weird, heeled feet. And also, I thought
to accommodate the shoes. They always like stand on their tiptoes.
But I also thought that the breasts on this being small was like a testament to like how young mothers used to be, maybe as well. Like that, you know, people used to have babies when they were like.
Well, when they were ready. When they were ready. Well, biologically ready. Just to be clear. Yes, exactly.
So that's a good chapter. I almost chose that chapter as well. It's a really good one. And then she talks about like the Bronze Age collapse and like there's a lot of mystery about like what this all means and stuff. That's a great one.
And it's and that it also just last thing I'll say about it is it does remind me of all the like in the 19th century there was that kind of resurgence of interest, and particularly early 20th century in like African tribal art and those the primitivism. This reminds me of that, and again, the neck is straight out of Modigliani.
It is.
But Matt, what's your next choice?
My second one was
you can see that Matt is having to work to find his. I have helpfully laid out on mine. I helpfully bookmarked on mine.
Well, the thing about this book as well is that it has really glossy pages. So what I would have ordinarily done was I just would have wrote notes in the book. But I feel
you can't do it.
I feel dirty. I would feel really bad if I did.
It would violate it as an art object in itself.
Exactly. My next one is Laocoon.
Yes.
I've always found this like a really erotic image, like because it's a guy.
Absolutely.
It's a guy basically like fighting off snakes while his sons get killed. The story behind it is, I think it's, if I recall correctly, it's a Trojan story. So it's like after Troy is like ostensibly saved, he goes to make an offering to like the gods or something like that. But then he did something, I forget what it was, to anger the gods, and then they send like serpents after him, and he starts.
It doesn't take much.
To
anger the gods.
And so they come out of the sea, and there's this statue that's like. It was found in a boarded-up cistern in Rome, like in the Renaissance, and so that's why they thought it was the Pope actually had an interest in it, and they thought that it was, an original from like ancient times or whatever. There is some doubt about that as to whether, and she talks about that, whether it is actually ancient or if it's just like an elaborate counterfeit, possibly by Michelangelo, which is really cool. I like that element of it. It's the kind of thing that's probably not true, but it's like fun to entertain, like the De Vere theory of Shakespeare. You know about that?
Tell me about it.
So I don't believe it. I'm just saying, but
I'll just say I'll just say up front, like I don't believe any harebrained theory about there was some like black servant who actually wrote Shakespeare's work. You know, that kind of thing.
The Edward de Vere theory is like that. Edward de Vere was like a man in the court of Queen Elizabeth I, and the idea was that he actually wrote the plays because he had all of the like political knowledge of everything, was like more, he was a poet as well and was like more cultured and stuff like this. But it's like a fun like little conspiracy theory to entertain.
Yeah.
Same with this one. Like I actually do think it's an ancient thing. It was sort of hidden away in that ancient Roman system because to hide it from looters, basically. I think it's pure marble, and it's like it's amazing. Like it's very much, you can tell it's the kind of statue that inspired the Renaissance, like in that Grecian nude style, like and very well preserved too. It's like a beautiful sculpture, and I like her description of it as well. That it's meant to be seen from the front. Excuse me. If you see it from the back, it's just like this writhing snakes and muscles, just chaos from the back, which I really like that description of it. And it's just really, it's kind of confronting and also just very erotic as well. I don't know, maybe it's just because it's three men and some snakes. Like
it's very,
he's double fisting some snakes. So
yeah, I agree. This isn't one of the ones I chose, but I'm not sure how much I have to say about it. But even the death-defying way that like marble is literally defying gravity here, which is another thing about Renaissance. No, sorry, not Renaissance, but even ancient sculptures. The innovations of like sculpture, of where marble can be made to look like gossamer thin, cloth, or as it has here, these kind of snakes seem to be sort of defying gravity in themselves. Such incredibly difficult to work on, I think. So,
right,
a trend to speak in itself.
Yeah.
Shall we try another? All right. So, what did I choose? Oh, okay.
I chose this one too.
Did you choose? Okay, so we both chose as our next one Donatello's. It's a sculpture of Mary Magdalene standing about 6 feet tall, carved out of wood.
It's fucking scary.
My eye is immediately drawn to this. Yeah. Mary Magdalene is this like imposing, wizened, almost crone-like figure. This is not how I imagine or I have seen Mary Magdalene depicted anywhere else. I immediately think of like the paintings of Mary Magdalene sitting in like the darkened room with the candlelight, either looking in a mirror or at the skull of mortality, where there's obviously a lot of thought put into like her beauty in itself. This is not beautiful.
Yeah, it's not beautiful. She's really cronish, and like it's almost like the clothes and her hair is like melting off her. Like,
well, that gave me a thought. It kind of actually put me in mind of like the description of John the Baptist.
Yeah,
with that kind of like that hair coat,
the homelessness look of it.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit mannish.
Yeah, a little bit mannish. Which is an interesting take from Donatello. Like Camille Paglia goes into it in the book that in her chapter on it that he's possibly has sublimated his homosexual urges into it because she's very mannish, and it's like whereas previously because this is a later work of Donatello, his previous work was very much like Michelangelo's, very like beautiful men. He hardly ever sculpted women, so this could also be like the gay man's like gay male misogyny here, like just making like one of the holiest women in Catholicism, like really fucking ugly and
haggard, gaunt.
You're not worthy of our beautiful Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. But although I would say that there is a religious element to it, that I could see here, where like, and I think Paglia kind of gets to it as well, where she talks about, Donatello would have struggled. There's not much known about him, although he did kind of run in these gay homosexual circles. That perhaps this is almost a picture of Dorian Gray sort of thing. Like, you know, obviously Mary Magdalene is a woman who has sinned, and maybe it's like
the physical embodiment of that debauched lifestyle.
Yeah.
Or also the kind of, I do get an impression of her as like a pain, suffering figure. So there's maybe this sort of transfiguration through suffering.
And a hermitage, like she's like, the legend is that she like absconded to somewhere in Europe and just was like a hermit for the rest of her life. So it could be from that period.
Yeah. I don't think she was described as a prostitute. I think that's a misunderstanding.
That's not in the Bible, no. Yeah, like,
but as a woman who sins,
yeah,
I think
often
generally.
she's conflated with the woman who Jesus in, I can't remember which gospel it is, but Jesus drives demons out of a wanton woman, and there's another, and the woman who he who throws the first stone,
the adulteress.
The adulteress, yeah. But actually it's not, like, there's no, in the Bible itself, it doesn't say that that's her, so that's just sort of like a later gloss that people have made on her. But in Catholicism, she's often associated with those, the one or two of those women. Yeah, it's really striking and very haunting. Like,
I can't take my eyes off it.
It's kind of scary as well.
Genuinely quite unnerving. The fact that it's carved out of wood, it's like this primal material.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about wood, there's something specifically masculine about wood.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying, like, even in ancient stuff, that the tree is like the phallic symbol.
Yeah.
Not just wood.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So my next one.
Oh yes.
Probably before
Sorry,
that.
I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was before that, actually. My next one was the Book of Kells, which I love.
Which I should take an interest in as an Irish person.
As an Irish person.
But I have never seen it.
Apparently it's housed at Trinity College in Dublin.
It is, still.
Yeah. So basically, I'm sure most people know what the Book of Kells is, but it's an illuminated manuscript of the Gospels from the Bible. And these are really, like, intricate. Like, she really hones in on, like, the Jesus Christ, but this abbreviation that they used to do in the Bible, these translations, which is like Cairo, and she talks about in the letters there's stories itself, like, so stories within stories within stories, which I like that element of it. But this is like a visualization of that, so I loved I've always loved the Book of Kells as like an item. Like, I love that it survived, and the Vikings burned so many fucking books when they conquered all those lands and monasteries and stuff.
Just remind me, the Book of Kells. This was essentially monks illustrating.
They were Irish monks
illustrating the Gospels.
But there were Irish monks who would illuminate what's called illuminating the Gospels. And she talks about the materials in this as well. They used like local bird feathers and stuff like that. So it wasn't just pretty paint and stuff like that, gold trimmings and stuff like that. But they were Irish monks in a colony in like a Scottish island. So, and there was a weird like provenance to this where that island was pillaged by Vikings, but most of the monastery were killed. That book survived and somehow got to back to Ireland, and where it sort of, after changing hands a couple of times, is still in Ireland. What I liked about this was the context that she added about this contributing to the Celtic revival in Victorian England or Britain. Like Yeats and people like that, and like being more. I'm even thinking of interested in the.
I'm thinking of like William Morris.
Yeah, and
like that designer.
Yeah, being interested in like the old myths and stuff like that. That's another thing that I was always interested in when I was younger too. Is the Irish myths, like what's his name, Cuchulainn and people like that. I read all of that shit.
Have you?
Yeah.
You've probably read more than I have.
Probably, yeah. But so yeah, I really liked that aspect of it. Again, she's connecting it to these, this is a medieval thing, like, and she connects it back to Victorian times, and obviously it connects back to biblical times as well, because it's a copy of the Bible. So,
and we're seeing here this twisty, writhing, kind of organic kind of form that she's always drawing kind of back upon this like relation to nature.
Yep. Yeah, so that was my other one. What was your
next one? Okay. So maybe I might have picked this one, maybe because I was thinking about Camille Paglia and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
But I chose Titian's The Venus with a Mirror.
Yep.
Pretty. There's just something about there's a repeated image throughout time of a beautiful woman sitting before her own vanity mirror that just repeats again and again. We have here a depiction of allegedly the goddess Venus sitting before one of her mirrors, held aloft by two Cupidic children. Something I love about this one in particular. First of all, she's incredibly self-satisfied. She's feeling pretty good about herself, pretty easy. Although the element of the mirror casts a reflection which suggests something else is going on. Maybe there's a decay, time is passing, a weariness, old age. There's just something about how she's captured within the mirror itself, partially, that suggests that this scene of voluptuous beauty is not all it's cracked up to be. The propensity in these like Renaissance paintings for like the characters to sort of be emerging out of a darkness, this primordial for lack of a better term, this primordial, like, all-encompassing kind of darkness.
Yep.
Same again with that Mary
swamp.
That Mary Magdalene figure again is that one point of illumination coming out of.
Yeah, she looks like a bog woman. That statue. So it looks like those bodies they find in the bog.
Yeah. So there's this. And this goddess seems to glow under her own powers. There's no visible source of light.
Yeah.
She seems to just sort of illuminate through her own luminosity, etc. Any thoughts?
I think it's a striking image. I love a bitch with like curves. So I think who did this one? What was
Titian from Venice?
Yeah.
So there's a preference here for the full-figured lady.
Yeah, the full-figured lady and the porcelain skin thing. This is something that like I think as an Irish person you might identify with this, but I think we need to bring back porcelain skin. Like why?
I've got it.
Yeah. Why do people have to have such a problem with being porcelain skinned and like have to put all this slap on them, like I really like when someone has a nice like white porcelain skin. Like not everyone has to be tanned,
No, absolutely not.
Variety is the spice of life. Embrace your pastiness, everyone, or everyone who's pasty.
Like glamour of the flesh, even the glamour of like these rich scarlet fur-lined raiments that she's got kind of snaking around her. Yeah. These like fine fabrics. This is all like going straight back to Venice as like a merchant city. You have like money flowing around. I don't know why. I just love it. I've always had like a slight issue with the depiction of cupids. The cupids.
Tell me.
Just the pudgy sort of mannish faces on them.
They always look fucked up, don't they? They always look
fucked up.
They're missing a chromosome
of children.
Yeah.
Or there's that kind of chthonic kind of view of children as these sort of beasts straight out of nature.
They are beasts and
goblins.
They're civilized.
Basically. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On the one other aspect, it's barely invisible in this painting, but it's just seen just below the feet of one of the cupids, which is the quiver of arrows, which she does mention. If you look very closely at the detail, you can actually see the the streaks of blood on the arrows, which is tying into Camille's all this idea of love is something like relationship is something we've like sort of quelled. Maybe it's become like a pastoral kind of genre. It's very sentimental, etc. But it's like it's just even the suggestion here of like love and romance is something kind of aggressive as sort of a conflict, penetrative. One doesn't come out of love and relationships like unscathed.
Yes, yeah.
That's what it's always harkened me back to. A real genuine loving relationship is not one without bloodshed.
Exactly.
In a figurative sense, at least.
But like, and this is why she's so good. Is she can point this stuff out like that. She can be honest about it as well. Like,
and it's and here it's the woman who is actually the administrator of the violent love. At least, I mean, through a proxy or through Cupid. But she is ultimately the one being adored. She's not the one who's being violated here. It's her lovers who are the ones who are
that's a really good
struck, not her. Which again feels like women is primary, men are not. Men are partial, fragmentary, fragile, desperately fragile creatures, and
Alright. I'll do my next one in a second. I really need to pee though.
Do you want to pause this?
No, you don't have to pause it. We'll just leave it. Say anything you want in it.
I probably won't.
Hi there, listeners. Sorry to interrupt. We really appreciate you listening to us, but if you'd like to hear more from us, you should check out our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/gettinglit and gain access to our exclusive bonus content, including Back Matter, a special after show where we chat a little bit more informally with our guests, usually about a film or something else related to the main episode. For just $5, you get access to these bonus episodes, as well as the full archive of every episode we've ever done. For more details and to get the most out of your Getting Lit podcast experience, go to patreon.com/gettinglit. Thanks for listening. Okay, back to the show.
And we're back.
The last thing
What
I
did
didn't
you say? Did you confess any dark secrets?
I did not confess anything. But the last thing I didn't actually say was, for some reason, the woman in front of a mirror reminded me of, obviously, Snow White, which ties me back to Camille Paglia yes, exactly. And the idea of...
do you feel represented?
No, what I was going to say was something about the woman, the mother goddess figure gazing in a mirror. What kind of mirror is this? Like, is it a magic mirror, essentially? Is she communicating with another uncanny kind of self? Is there something potentially kind of destructive about this relationship? The suggestion of like the mother goddess is like her other side is a witch, sorceress, someone in commune with the elements. That comes across very clearly.
And again, very Palian, very chthonic.
Exactly.
Right, my next one.
So, next one.
My next one was... until it goes... I didn't have my glasses. So
do you want me to help you though? What are we looking for?
It's the portrait of the Doctor, the art deco one.
The Smart Olympica one.
Yeah.
Yes, I chose this one too.
Oh, amazing.
Where is it? Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
The portrait of Dr. Bouchard.
Loved it.
If it's pronounced Bouchard. Bouchard, I think. Yes.
This was amazing. Like, I'd never seen this picture before, and I love it. Like, some people, he kind of looks like Gregory Peck. But he's like in this trench coat. It's in this Art Deco style. He's got a vial of like blood or whatever he's doing. He was the inventor of like a probiotic, and one of the things that Paglia talks about is how Art Deco used to have this reputation of being like a little bit trashy, like that, because rich people like would commission things and things like that. But now it's sort of, I guess it's sort of considered. People like it now.
It's very desirable.
Yeah.
It brings up ideas of Rockefeller.
Howard Roark.
Yeah.
Ayn Rand sort of stuff.
Yeah. Like I actually think immediately of Ayn Rand when I look at like a Tamara Olympica figure, and not just because I think the Penguin Editions chose to use Tamara Olympica's paintings on some of their. Like I read not Atlas Shrugged, the other one. The Fountainhead. The Fountainhead has the woman in the motor car, like on the front of it, which is an interesting choice. And they probably do it for a few others. One of my secret loves is the pairing of books, like in publishing, the pairing of books with particular paintings. I don't know. I have a secret love of like what a great job it would be in publishing to like pair.
You should do a podcast.
Works
on
of
that.
fiction with like actual paintings.
You should do a podcast on that.
I have something else to say about that with one of the other paintings that I chose. But yeah, this always makes me think of Ayn Rand.
Yeah. It was very Randian to me, and I love the commission aspect of it. And one of the things that points that Paglia makes in this chapter about what's her name, Tamara Olympica. Again, like Rand, a Russian immigrant.
Yep.
Who escaped the communists, I think. And
lived her life in France, I think.
And then eventually ended up in France. But she makes the point that Art Deco being this like very capitalist, like populist art movement, I guess, and contrasting that to the avant-garde and like weird for the sake of weird shit. And I love that she talked about that and how even something like this, that the kind of mainstream art world kind of looked down upon, had a sort of power. And even though it was commissioned, like as almost like a vanity project, like it's still a very striking image. And she also links this back to the first chapter because in this image, Tamara Olympica, like kind of references the Egyptian figures in that he's turned in a particular way that is very like indicative of those ancient Egyptian figures.
And
so I thought that was cool.
The kind of shapes that are the kind of abstract shape behind them. There's one that definitely looks like a pyramid.
Exactly. Yeah.
Art
Deco was obsessed with like pyramids and shit as well. Yeah.
The kind of apex kind of structure. I was immediately drawn to this. I don't think that Scientific Inquirer has ever looked so dynamic.
Oh man, it looks so sexy.
So like exciting.
Yeah.
Like the way his body is like, so his right leg is turned away and his torso is turned the opposite way. He's wearing this massive white lab coat,
but it looks like a
trench coat.
Yeah.
And actually, when I showed this to my partner, he immediately said, like, is that person like a secret agent or something? Which was actually quite an astute observation, because the trench coats would have been associated with like army officers in the First World War, which then became the coat of the the private detective and the samurai, like these types of figures. So it elevates like the scientist to this like this quester kind of role, and the lapels turned up and like the exaggerated like built up shoulders on this coat. It's incredibly fashionable.
Oh, it's so good. It's so chic. And I love the little split at the bottom. Like it's like a little bit saucy.
A little bit saucy.
Like showing a bit of leg.
A little bit saucy. The little pearl on the tie. That the kind of the background kind of abstractions, like the color is tied in with that of the lab coat itself.
Yep.
And he's like strikingly like tanned, handsome. He's got this sort of far off look on his face.
Like he's contemplating the mysteries of the universe.
Exactly, and the test tube, the vital, it's the only red in the painting.
Yeah.
There's like, whatever it is he's got in there, and we think it's probiotics, because that's what he made his money off. It's like
Microscope.
the microscope.
Yeah.
He's the search for the mysteries of life has never looked quite as dynamic and exciting as what Tamara Delempica did in this painting.
It's quite, dare I say, Apollonian.
It's quite Apollonian, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think that was all my 5. So do you have another one? Mm-hmm. That was all 5 of mine.
Was that all 5?
Yeah.
I did have one more. I actually admit I did. I pulled out 4, and then frustrating, I was like, I can't possibly pick another one. So I like literally just did this one by haste. But I did go for the Caspar David Friedrich painting of the Sea of Ice. This one I admittedly encountered again through one of my favorite areas, which is when publication houses will use works of art to adorn the covers of their books. This was actually this specific image of essentially we have a ship being completely crushed, annihilated even out of sight by shifting plates of ice. So when we used to send expeditions to the Arctic poles, basically the ships would have been encased, they would have been moving just between these plates of ice, and if those plates of ice even would close around the ship, if they even moved like 1 inch or something, it would mean like complete destruction of the ship. It would tear the whole thing apart. Devastating. You can see just in the corner of the image the bow of the ship going down in the aftermath of this like utter violent destruction. This image was used on, I think, the Norton Anthology copy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
Which is a very out-of-the-box image to use for Frankenstein as opposed to something more obvious. Like
That's a great choice.
Like a monstrous figure, obviously.
That is a great
would be the obvious
choice
one.
for Frankenstein. Because it's like there's so much in Frankenstein about nature, right? And I think this is all about nature, like the power of nature, and like fuck with it at your own peril.
The utterly
sort of,
inhumane, all-encompassing, devastating power of nature. Yeah, absolutely. Which Camille ties it in with Friedrich was would have been like a romantic part of the Romantic movement. She ties it in with the Gothic literary phenomena, which this is very much a part of, which Frankenstein is very much a part of. There's so much in Frankenstein which is really just about sort of a tiny person at risk of being totally crushed by the overwhelming nature of nature.
Yeah, nature, yeah.
Exactly. So much about like contemplating the Alps and like snowstorms and the blasted tree stump struck by lightning and things like that. That automatically like transports me back to something like Frankenstein, and not any of the cliched images about, although Caspar did a lot of this about like kind of crypts and graveyards and twilight, and this whole period even makes me think of do you know Fuseli? Illustrator Fuseli. My mind always goes back to Fuseli and his paintings and illustrations of like the nightmare, the woman in the gossamer white nightie lying splayed across a bed, her head thrown back with the goblin
such a scary
sitting
image,
on her chest with the nightmare like poking through the curtain, kind of looking at her as like a sort of joke, I guess.
I mean, I love her lady boner for romanticism. I love that she brings in romanticism so much, but I love romanticism too because there's something about it that is like that I think we need right now as well, like a kind of vitalist spirit that is lacking. But generally, like even something as simple as this image, which is like what's the word? Consumption, for want of a better word, of nature. This like ravenous, it'll just like eat everything. Sort of.
That Ouroboros kind of nature resurging and claiming back itself and reincorporating into itself.
I love that she identifies that and talks about these like really primal spiritual things, whereas like she says in the introduction, so many people who are often like influenced by leftist and Marxist theory, it's all about the social, and it's like, well, some things like this are beyond the social. Like this is like stuff that has haunted us since we first like crept out of caves, you know, like so this is very primordial stuff that is like, you cannot reduce it to like economic conditions.
No.
And I think that's what's really great about Paglia is that she goes beyond that. Like she doesn't ignore it. If it's relevant, she'll talk about that sort of stuff. But it's not all reduced to that, you know?
And Friedrich, he wasn't interested in people. Like they were always painted from the back. I remember like maybe the Manchester Art Gallery, they had his is the Wanderer on the Sea of Mist, a very famous image of the the walker with the cane, kind of foot on the precipice, looking out into this just vast, where the mist covering these mountains, where the mountain tops appear like just little islands, and the sea, this ocean and the sky just seem to merge into one. Incredibly powerful image. And completely like the human is almost irrelevant in it. They're kind of a speck lost in this swirling primordial.
You know what's funny about that? I'm going to lean back, so I'm moving. You know what's funny about that is that you can often see that in romantic works that kind of do that, the human is insignificant thing, but also the individualist, the person who usually an artist or a poet or whatever, who is like the supreme individual, is almost like fighting that, and it's like, but there's an almost pagan acknowledgement that you can't fight that, but still they fight it anyway.
That's the story of humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the entire story of why we're here. Against all odds, we keep pushing back against nature. I mean, and it goes straight back to Paglia.
Yeah,
exactly.
And she's like one of the few people who actually talks about this.
Yeah.
Everyone else like just sort of, and has a reverence for it as well. Like, there's no, like, I get there's a lot of well-meaning people who talk about this stuff in terms of the social or the economic or whatever. But to me, it always seems that there's very little reverence for that like that spiritual aspect of it. And she has a lot of reverence for that, which like I really appreciate, and the passion like just comes through in her writing.
And that is the point of this book. Is to actually restore a reverential view and relation to artwork, which is completely absent if you've ever been through university these days studying art or literature. There is very, very little reverence, very little sense of the awe-struck nature of just being in contact with just an astounding image that shouldn't really exist like at all.
And an image that has a place in a tradition of images and
an image that's larger.
As
it goes far beyond itself. That's also a hallmark of something that's truly great, is that it detaches itself from its context in which it was made. It is so much more than that. It lights up all those things in our brain that corresponds to those ancient forms, the ancient archetypes, the ancient stories of humanity. Those are the things that really persist, they last, and they still have this tremendous power. And everything now is like sneering. It's seen as a sign of weakness to be to have a reverential relation to art. It's seen as passé to admire art, or to think that beauty in itself is something incredibly worthwhile.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I was going to say earlier, but I forgot to, was that I think Paglia, probably one of my favorite sort of points of hers that puts her in opposition to a lot of like mainstream art, literature, culture, kind of academics, is that she kind of believes that myths and like stories and religious traditions, spirituality, that all goes into art and influences art. But the particular problem we have now that she is opposed to is that people think that art is directly responsible for those things, that art creates myths, art creates politics, and that's why you have all of this stuff about like political correctness and stuff like that. All of that stuff is actually following, like it's lagging art, you know, like throughout history it's always something that comes after the art, you know. And so that's the point of view. But I like that she says, no, this like these myths and these stories have like, and these beliefs have contributed to this image like appearing, you know, rather than like trying to argue that the image is indicative of you know, some kind of like political project or whatever.
Yeah, like the belief system came from the artwork as opposed to the other way around. Yeah, so like art and religion, as far as I can see it, are basically, you know, they share a similar root. Like they share a common root. Like they're branches of the same tree.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, she argues this as well. Yeah, definitely.
That arguably, and there's also a sneering relation not only to art but to religion now.
Yeah.
Like, and to a certain extent, I would understand that. Certainly, there's
but that is
a lot of criticism to go around for organized religion, and
that is
I share it, and everyone.
But that is a sneering. Like, if you think about it, religion and art were inextricable for a very, very long time. Yeah. So, sneering attitude towards religion is a sneering attitude towards art. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. In terms
and that's where we're at. Yeah. Essentially.
Yeah.
Just a sneering, distant, ironic approach to both art and religion.
Yeah.
Religion is, I would say, it's even worse off maybe than art, and that's maybe even more dangerous. Is that no one takes any of it seriously, like at all. Like.
Sorry, guys. I hope you don't mind.
No, it's alright. Because there's a lot of people still in the world right now who are very, very firm adherents to religious doctrine. And in the West, we're just like, oh, they're just all part of, you know, just myths that are not real. They're all grand narratives that are there to ensnare us and to advance a political project to secure power for a dominant class against us, etc. So yeah, I think people ignore it at their own peril.
Yeah.
And I just as I had a resurgence of interest from, and Camille Paglia is responsible for that in going backwards. I also had a resurgence of interest in like our originary spiritual narratives, like the ways we, you know, as the victims of nature, so helpless against it, like how we would have, you know, with the that inchoate consciousness, like started to come together, to come up with some idea of how the world worked and what our position was in relationship to it. People think we think that's all gone. It's all surpassed, but I'm like, I don't know if it is.
Well, yeah, I think
everything could be wiped away at any point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think lots of people actually need religion, but like they replace it with religious-like things, and that's basically, in my opinion, what ideology is.
Yeah.
Ideology is like the band-aid for the religious impulse.
Yeah.
Essentially.
That's pretty much what I would say too.
Yeah. So
they'll make a religion out of something else, something secular, like
black people.
or transgender people, or post-structuralism, or whatever.
But anyway, any final thoughts on this book and Paglia in general?
I mean, I'm very sorry to say that she outlines in her first chapter, like, the aspiration for this book was that parents would buy it for their children, particularly like those homeschooled children.
Oh, if I had kids, I would totally buy this and force it on them. It's like, okay, it's Tuesday night, it's time for glittering images night. Like, we're all going to read glittering images
Even more
together.
so, I love the idea she had of just like, if a parent was to buy this book and just have it just lying around the house to allow a child just to come across it. That's usually how I encountered books at home, was while my parents didn't necessarily have the same taste as I have developed to have, they just still have a lot of like just great things, interesting things lying around that I would just, on my own, just exploring, you would pick up and just leaf through. And even if you weren't reading in depth, there were picture books, there were not a huge amount of art books, but there were books that certainly contained a lot of art. But my original thought was, I'm very sorry to say that since she printed this book in 2012, we think, her idea that there really needs to be a revival of the way that we're teaching art in schools, particularly the kids, I'm very sorry to say that probably is further away than ever, and that it certainly hasn't happened yet, as she hoped that it would.
Oh well.
And I still have hope that it could, but I'm not exactly positive about it.
Nor am I. Although maybe it's just up to podcasters to do it.
But if anything, don't go to an art gallery. Sit quietly by yourself and just leisurely read through these glossy pictures and just take them in at your own time.
Yeah. And it's an easy book to do that. Like, you don't have to read the whole thing cover to cover. You can just, like, flick through it, see an image you like, and then read what she says about it, I said.
I guess there's a more correct attitude to approach things, is merely just to be open. Get rid of that mentality of this academic suspicion of the artwork must be doing something to me, some kind of subterfuge. It must be seducing me in some way.
It's suspicious.
It's suspicious. It's part of a power play, and therefore pulling me into its power play, etc. No, just be totally open to it. Revere it. Like marvel in its beauty and the impossibility of its techniques that went into create it.
Yep. I totally co-sign all that. I would also say as well that one thing I forgot to say about Paglia is I think she's very much... Have you read Robert Hughes? The Australian art critic? Shock of the New?
No, she might mention him at some point.
Yeah, she has, I think. But she's very similar
to... The Shock
to...
of the New?
Yeah.
I've heard of that,
Yeah. She's very similar to him in that she really laments painting, and so does he, because like once the photographic image sort of took off, it became all about
I agree.
I agree too.
Get back to painting.
Get back to painting. All you artists out there, get back to painting. Because there's something to it. There's an alchemy to it that is like different from just capturing something.
Yeah.
Like
I do have a lot of love for photography.
So do I, yeah.
But there is something, there's a magnetic power about painting itself that can be reproduced, and it can be reproduced in images.
Yeah.
It can be reproduced in photographic images, I mean.
Yeah. All right, one final question I have for you.
Okay, cool.
Before we head off. What is a glittering image for you that it was not included in this book? Maybe something more recent.
A glittering image that is not in this book.
Is there any image that you can think of that is like, is the apotheosis of glittering to you?
Oh, that's such a good question, and I don't know if I have a great answer to it. I
have a great. I have an answer.
Why don't
for
you
it.
tell me yours and give
Mine
me something to think about?
is the Trump mugshot.
The Trump mugshot?
Glittering image. Such a good image. Like, I mean, there are so many good images. Like, he is a master of just mimetic images. Like, he is just so good at it.
Yeah.
But
I know this is going to be popular, but maybe not with your listeners, but other people. But the image of him just directly after being shot at.
Yeah, that is a great image.
With the bodyguards surrounding him and him lifting his fist in this just like almost unheard of these days, like heroic way. And I'm not saying anything specifically about Trump here. Like, I'm not condoning or anything like that, whatever. But there is something undeniable about the power of that image. Or even the one of him just, like, serving at McDonald's.
Yeah. Oh my god, that one's so funny. Like, he produces so many glittering images.
Yeah.
Like, he really does. He's a master at it.
And I tell you what, in the genre of politicians going out and, like, pretending that they're the everyman doing everyman work, that's like among the best of him going to serve at McDonald's. I love that people paired it with Lana Del Rey doing the similar kind of thing years before. I love that so much.
It's amazing. Yeah. But do you have any others?
Glittering image. Oh my god.
Did I put you on the spot?
A little bit. I usually have so much to talk about, but I don't have one in a minute. I guess I was still thinking about this theme about like women and Snow White and everything. Have you seen what is it? It's a Nicholas Winding Refn film called The Neon Demon.
Yes, I have seen that.
That is almost like a contemporary Snow White fairy tale, which is done in the entire aesthetic of, it feels like it's from a music video, from a glossy magazine cover, about the relation between these women of, you got your Snow White figure, and then you have these typically three, almost like witchy kind of other women. Two of them are models and one of them is a makeup artist, and that film, while I'm not a huge fan of Nicholas Winding Refn, something about that film I just like tremendously powerful. Just about the nature of women. Of like, there's a woman who just has something, and everyone else is like, she just has this thing, and I've just got to find out what it is, and I've got to take her down a few pegs or two.
Yeah.
And the metaphor of like cannibalism, of like eating the beautiful object, this beautiful object sacrificed. But also if Snow White became like conscious of the fact that she was beautiful, that it actually conferred like an enormous power to her to realize that she was actually gorgeous, that she could lord it over other people. Like that. This is really answering your question, but
no, that's a great.
I thought it was a stunning film.
But the film itself could be a glittering image.
Exactly. My partner said it was like, my partner was like, you watch some fucked up shit. I'm like, I know it is fucked up shit. Yes, they did eat her completely, and then the other one, you know, who was all plasticky and had plastic surgery, she couldn't handle it in the end, so she cut herself open and her eye falls out of her stomach, and then one of the girls, she was like, can't let that go to waste. So I'll eat it. Like the symbolic incorporation of the eye itself is like, I have so many thoughts on this, and I can't get them out right now. But
well, I would say as well, and you know, if you follow us on Instagram, I'll probably tag your Instagram when I publish the episode. And your Instagram is actually a very good curation of glittering images. Like,
oh, you think so?
Yeah. You have a very good eye, particularly for masculine glittering images.
Yeah, we didn't actually get into that a lot. Maybe because Paglia, we really got to skew towards the feminine.
Yeah. But like, you know, I love your Instagram because it's always like, you know, I get my Tom Selleck, Burt Reynolds masculinity. Not just them, but like that sort of genre.
Yeah. Like, there's a bit of Tom in Finland that comes up. We didn't talk about Tom in Finland at all.
Yeah, of course.
And Camille obviously would have loved to talk about Tom in Finland.
Yeah.
She would have put it in this book, except that the home the homeschooling mothers wouldn't probably have tolerated it.
No. But like, I think, I think I really appreciate your Instagram for that.
Thank
but
you.
Also, you're welcome. I just think the Trump mugshot is amazing. There's he just produces so many great glittering images, and also
Despite what else do you think about him?
yeah,
What else?
like and also at the end of this book, she mentions George Lucas and Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, we didn't mention this at all.
Well, look,
You're going to talk about it.
we're going to talk
in a
about
later
this
episode.
in the Patreon episode. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to be talking with Cody LaDuke and Psi from Rare Candy. We're going to talk about Revenge of the Sith, and Matt Fresta, my co-host, will be there as well. So tune in for that. You'll have to pay for that though. But yeah, we'll be discussing Star Wars and the glittering images in that film franchises. But for now, do you have anything to plug or whatever? Do you have anything to say finally? Or?
I have nothing to plug. I have nothing to sell. If you really want to follow me on Instagram, it is
I'll link it. Yeah.
you can link it, but it's Life to Be Shadows. There's not really a story behind that, but it's just a phrase that I thought was cool, so I picked it. But thank you so much for saying that about my Instagram. It's like really a very afterthought side thing. But yeah, I've absolutely loved this.
Yeah.
I hope you'll have me again sometime.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye. We're speaking about pub sports.